Hey everybody, Edo here, and I have another installment of my Kickstarter Hot Topics. Lots in the last 2 weeks, and actually I got a little caught up in things that I didn't get to this video, but I think it worked out because I have some resolutions on a lot of topics that came up one way or another. There were a lot of conversations about different campaigns, as well as just other dynamics. I'll work through them. I have a list right here. So to kick it off, a lot of people reacting to Simon's Cthulhu, Death May Die, huge campaign, gigantic miniatures, and all sorts of interesting Kickstarter backer tiers with when you're going to receive the game and how much it costs you, and sort of like early birds to the max. And it was sort of, and honestly, a lot of people react poorly to Simon going big with their campaigns. I would just, don't worry about it, right? Those guys and gals are kicking butt and they're driving their products and making games. And as far as I can tell, people are thrilled and very happy when they get them. So they're a major player and they're doing a lot of stuff. And I don't know, I wouldn't worry too much about it and get worked up, because they're going to keep coming out with their short campaigns, long campaigns. You know, it's worth always watching and seeing, and maybe one day I'll back a Simon project. I don't think I have thus far, but I did like Potion Explosion. So that was one campaign. Then there were two campaigns that came out that were questionable, right? So one of which was Overturn Rising Sand by Foxtail Studios, not to be mistaken with like Foxtail Games or just like somebody did a chart of all of the different Fox companies. But Foxtail Studios did a campaign which seemingly took one-for-one text and rules and just content from other Kickstarter campaigns and board games. People were posting comparisons, and there was a whole workup because the campaign was doing really well and people felt that they were literally just stealing IP and content. Now, I haven't personally gone line for line, but there was an uproar, there were complaints, and Kickstarter suspended the campaign. So a lot of people were upset about it, rightly so, but it seems like it sort of is working out. Like, they did something that was very questionable, people made noise, and it was stopped, as far as I can tell. So I think the moral of the story is, one, don't lift other people's stuff, whether it's text or their campaign, you know, text from their campaign, text from their rule book, you know, make your own games. But also that Kickstarter, while they may not be responding to every comment and every email they get, seemingly does pay attention to these things. And I think that many of the companies directly impacted by the IP, the theft, if you will, reached out to Kickstarter. So, you know, again, it's this hot platform where people can try and do what they want, and ultimately, in this case, and hopefully many cases of this type, Kickstarter intervened. One where Kickstarter didn't intervene, but of a similar nature, was Lucky Troll Games with their Dr. Horrible's Evil League of Evil game, which was a campaign, sort of a fan attempt at making a Dr. Horrible's board game, but they didn't have any of the rights. Now, I was watching this along the way, and it sort of appeared like they were saying they didn't have the rights, and then people were flipping out about them. Now, admittedly, like, raising money for something that you can't legally do is a problem, and they were called out for that aggressively, and ultimately the creator canceled the campaign. I don't know what would have been a better way to be a fan and try to make something with, you know, for an IP or a license that you don't have. Probably not Kickstarter, probably not this way of doing it, but perhaps there would have been a way to say, let's raise some money to get attention from this, for this. I don't know. I don't know if there was a good way to do it. But uproar, response, and they pulled the campaign and wrote an apology note, and seemingly was well-intentioned but misguided. And I think that happens. So, but it was interesting, and again, it was one where it sort of self-resolved. You know, Simon, they're just making a couple $1 million on their Cthulhu game. Surprise, surprise. Overturn Rising Sand was suspended and probably being watched, and Lucky Troll Games Dr. Horrible's Evil League of Evil was canceled. Another thing that came up, which isn't really a Kickstarter per se, but related, was Sagrada has been a really huge success, mega game, and I believe started on Kickstarter, but there was a big uproar when the folks with Azul, amazing game, Plan B Games, decided to release or announce Azul Sinatra, which is based on sort of some stained glass look and feel. A lot of people got upset about this. A lot of people felt like they were crushing the little guy, the independent, stealing. And I had a very different reaction. Like, yeah, obviously it's never fun to have a competitor and sort of feel like you've carved out your space. But what Sagrada did in many ways was identify a theme and an audience and an interest that lots of people have. Herbaceous, much smaller game, but showed that you could have a game about herbs. And there have been many other games about herbs and flowers and gardens, right? So, I think that's one of those places where net probably continues to get people excited. The conversation of, do you like Azul, Sinatra, or Sagrada will go a long way and be around for a long time. And I would be very surprised if somebody said, let's copy Sagrada. What they might have said was, hey, it looks like there's a huge interest in stained glass and stained glass themes. Maybe that's something we could do. Or it might have even been like, hey, we've got these tiles. Somebody said we could get a cheaper version if we make them sort of plastic and translucent. What could we do with cool plastic translucent things that are colorful, that stained glass? Aha. I don't know. I haven't been a part of it. But, what is that expression? It's copying the best flattery. Like, to me, this is in a different category than some of the other things that we saw, right? It's not like they're copying the gameplay. It's a strong theme and a theme they're going after with their own assets and graphics. So there'll be many games before and many games to come, that kind of thing. So back to Kickstarter. Another conversation that came up, again, was just the always hearing about the huge 800-pound gorilla, mega companies running Kickstarter campaigns, and that's pushing out the little guys. And there's truth to it, but at the same time, you just have to, brush it off and keep trying and find your market and find your niche, find your tribe and make your game. I don't think sweating that is really worth the energy. But it can be unfortunate. I've launched campaigns against mega, huge, crazy, gigantic campaigns, and it's tough. It's certainly tough. Another conversation that came up was about Kickstarters and publishing. Can I Kickstarter if I've given my game to a publisher, or will somebody publish me after the Kickstarter? That kind of conversation. Listen, taking on a Kickstarter is a huge effort and ordeal and energy. It takes a ton. If you're going to go down that route because you want to. If you're pushing your game and people aren't picking up from a publisher perspective, that might be a good reason to go down a Kickstarter, but it's not like A then B. You really need to think about and think through all of the energy to do the Kickstarter. Also, if you're planning to do a Kickstarter, but you're not against having a publisher, there's no reason you can reach out. You can't reach out. So just because you have a Kickstarter planning doesn't mean you can't go to speed datings and reach out to publishers. Absolutely. If somebody's considering your game and you're in contract negotiations, you should resolve that. But there's no reason you can't say, I was going to do a Kickstarter, but I decided to go with a publisher. Along the same lines, if you've done a Kickstarter, you can talk to publishers, but it's just a different thing. Sometimes publishers feel like you made the splash. Sometimes they'll still want to change things, so it becomes hard. But there are many games that do small Kickstarters that do get publishers, and there are many games that do big Kickstarters and get publishers as well. So just be honest with yourself in terms of your energy and effort, and be honest with the publisher. It should all work out fine. What else? Some conversations around what to do in the back of the box. Look, the back of your box is really important, much more for retail than Kickstarter. Kickstarter, you don't even need a back of the box. You just need your Kickstarter page. No one's going to actually see the back of a box. But once you're hitting retail, look, the front of your box should get people to reach and grab, and then they're going to turn around, and the back of the box should sell them. It should have clear explanation of the narrative, the fiction, the fun. It should clearly show the components and the layout and the experience, and it should align to what's on the front, right? Oh, this is like a really fun family weight game, and I flip over and it matches that, right? One of my games that has struggled with that a little bit is Legendary Creatures. Legendary Creatures on the front looks really light, colorful, tons of creatures, sort of Pokemon-esque. And on the back, it's a little bit of a heavier, media weight game. And that's a struggle, a tension that title has always had, but you want to think that through always. So the back of the box is the point. It's like an ad where you've got click through and now you want to convert, right? So front of the box, they've clicked on it, they're looking at it, they're flipping it, and now they're sort of getting ready to install, to pay, and you want the back of the box to close it, along with reviews and word of mouth and other things. There were a couple more things I wanted to... Oh, something that came up that I thought was really interesting was conversation around, like, and it was sort of relevant to me, but can game reviewers be Kickstarter creators or game designers, or like is a conflict of interest? And just a lot of people talking about that. I thought it was a really interesting thread. I would say naturally somebody can be a reviewer and be a game designer, and it can be a reviewer and be a publisher. Like presumably if you're a reviewer, you should let people know if you're talking about your own game or a game that you've published. Like there's some areas where you really want to be clear about it, but I don't see any reason why there's a direct conflict. Along those lines, I mean, I think when people are interested in understanding conflicts, they should think about relationships and other things. So like, for example, an area, a nuanced area is I've published games with Steve Finn and Keith Matejka. Both those guys do their own Kickstarters, and both those guys have games that they want reviewed. I love their games. That's why I work with them, and the games are fantastic. When I review one of their games or preview it, and I'm, correct me if I'm wrong, but almost universally I'll say, hey, it depends on how long in the past, because I was reviewing Steve's stuff before we started working together, but I'll say, hey, this is, Steve Finn, and by the way, he designed Herbaceous and we worked together. Or this is Keith Matejka and he did the solo thing in here. So there's this relationship, so you should take it with a grain of salt, right? So some of that you want to explain, but I don't think it takes away your ability to talk about the product. Some other people were talking about whether or not your designs are bad. Certainly if your designs are bad, people don't like your games, they might not like your reviews, but I'll actually tell you, oftentimes there are people who are really good at critiquing things, but terrible at making things. Like, it's interesting, but you can have somebody with a great, incredible perspective and nuance and the ability to tear things down and dissect and just understand and explain and communicate to people, but struggle doing that to their own work and what they're looking on. Like, that's not uncommon. And so I think you should just keep that in mind, I guess. But I don't think it wholesale is something where you like, a reviewer can't do that. Albeit I'm biased because I obviously do Kickstarters, publish, and review, right? That we talked about that. So I think that covered it. It's really dynamic and interesting times. It's lots of fun to be a part of, to watch, to pay attention to. The discussions are lively, and I think that all that's happening is a part of a growing community of gamers, a growing community of developers, creators, and it's super cool. So don't let certain campaigns bring you down. Don't try not to get too anxious. Just, do your best and make great stuff, and I think it's all going to be awesome. So anyway, this was Kickstarter Hot Topics. Hey everybody, Edo here, and thanks for watching Gaming with Edo. Reviews over here on this playlist, League and Insider videos over here on this one. Subscribe, share, all that good stuff. But most importantly, play some great games. Thanks.